everyone. I'm Brian Wilson, and this is the extra added hour of the, well, it's not the extra hour yet. It's the regular 6 o'clock hour of the drive, but we are, all hands are on deck here at the Nashville Palace, and I'm telling you, the place is hopping. It's absolutely hopping here tonight, it's going to be, and we also have feedback, but we've got a good crowd here tonight for our special coverage of Super Tuesday. I'm Brian Wilson. He's Dan Mandis. He's Matt Murphy. He's Chris Hand. All hands are on deck.
And we're having a good time here. By the way, I want to make sure we thank our sponsors out here at the Nashville Palace. GlockStore270.com, Visibee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, and also Members Nutrition. Thank you to everyone. And I got to tell you that, have we, Brian and Chris and Matt, have we seen any surprises? The one thing that I've seen, and this was out of maybe a couple of hours ago, and that is that Robert Kennedy, RFK Jr., is now flirting officially with the Libertarian Party. So, yeah, the question is...
And that would be interesting because it would give him some support that he doesn't have. He's not raising a lot of money. That would make him a stronger third-party candidate.
Yeah, this is from the Wall Street Journal, and I really want to hear Matt's opinion on this because he is a Libertarian with a small L. They say Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fueling talk of a Libertarian Party switch. Libertarians have taken notice of Kennedy's more recent movements, quietly expressing willingness to nominate him at their late May convention in Washington, D.C. They say that he could be the most consequential third-party run since Ross Perot. So, I mean, there's some in the Libertarian Party that are excited about this, others not so much.
If you want to meet a real libertarian, you find someone that will argue with you about what being a real libertarian is. So, I mean, and if you want to meet a group of real libertarians, you find the people that are arguing amongst themselves about who's the purest libertarian. Here, I don't know who that hurts worse, the Libertarian Party or Robert F. Kennedy. I would tend to believe that Robert F. Kennedy running as a libertarian would actually hurt Robert F. Kennedy's third-party run more than it would help it. Because the libertarians are famously or infamously horrible at running political campaigns. They're great at ideology. They're great at purity ideology. They know what they believe in. They are horrible at politics itself. And I actually think that it would hurt RFK to run as a libertarian. And that's coming from a guy that characterizes himself as a small L libertarian.
What does it mean, though, when you have Kennedy, who the higher-ups in the party, the Libertarian Party, whoever they are, seem to like...
It's a good question. When you figure that out, would you let me know? Because nobody seems to understand.
They seem to like him coming on. It's almost like they're starstruck.
Yeah, they're glomming onto the name ID.
Right.
But Kennedy does check a lot of those boxes. I mean, the Libertarians are very, very anti-vaccine. They're very anti the messaging that was surrounded COVID. They're very fiercely independent of their own bodies and their own persons and their own liberty. All of that checks. Libertarians don't really wade into abortion waters, and so that also checks. So it makes sense in those ways that Robert F. Kennedy could kind of fit into that libertarian mold because they kind of keep away from some of those social issues that separate libertarians from conservatives.
It does seem to be sort of an interesting fit, no doubt about that. That because he was, I think libertarians and RFK probably in lockstep when things like vaccines, etc.
That's right.
So I can see why it might happen.
Now here would be
the
my
four
question.
of us are trying to identify which one of us is the feedback culprit, right? We're talking, Hand is doing it, I'm doing it. We apologize on air. We got a little feedback. We got a lot of people in the building, and maybe a little bit of feedback because we want to make sure that everybody in the building can hear us. So we apologize.
Right. Now here's the big question, though. Who ultimately? I don't think RFK Jr. is going to be the president.
No.
But who would that help and who would that hurt? Polling has shown that when you look at all of the candidates, and Brian pointed this out earlier, when you have all five of those candidates together, Trump, Biden, and everybody else, all the rest, then Trump actually is beating Biden more in the polling when you put in all of those other people. So if Kennedy jumps in, personally, I think that probably helps Trump. It'll pull from both of them, but ultimately, I think that it'll hurt Joe Biden more.
Well, I think we all know that Democrats are looking for anybody other than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Amen.
And all the polling shows that. So I think the more candidates you throw in, the more it hurts Biden.
I think Trump's base support is baked. right? I mean,
Yeah,
it is baked.
there's no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. And so I don't know how much of that top layer you're going to be able to shave off in November from Trump to hand to a Kennedy. I think anybody that anyone that's going to vote for Robert F. Kennedy has already flirted with him enough that they're not baked into that Trump cake. So I think the more candidates, like Chris said, the more candidates, the more opportunity people have to say, well, I can support a Robert F. Kennedy because Joe Biden is old and I don't like Kamala Harris or whatever it might be. But I think the dynamic that really upsets the apple cart is one that Brian and I have been talking about, well, all four of us have been talking about, and that's the possibility that it's not going to be candidate Biden for the Democrat Party.
Can I interrupt you for a moment? What are we now? It's 13 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. And Fox News has said Biden wins Virginia.
There you go.
I mean,
imagine that.
You know, the thing about it is that because they know pretty well how this is going to go. Biden, look, they can call him in virtually all of these states. They might as well just go ahead and do it. But what's interesting is that they look at these bellwether counties, and if the first few numbers, I mean, you've only got like 3,000 people who have reported their votes in Virginia, and they can already call it. That's going to be Trump is going to be a little closer, but she's got in the early going with only a few, just a small smidgen of voting in. Haley's in there in Virginia. She might do okay in Virginia because Northern Virginia is right next to D.C. and there's a lot of very moderate Republicans. If they are Republicans, they're moderate in that part of the world.
Northern Virginia is drastically different than Central and Southwestern Virginia.
That's right.
So here's one of the other questions that I would have. I read an article, I think it was in Daily Mail, maybe the Wall Street Journal, but the whole uncommitted vote that we saw in Michigan. Do you see that spreading into other states tonight? Because I know that there was some talk about that uncommitted vote spreading to states outside of Michigan.
I heard that Nikki Haley's best shot might be in Colorado. Because in Colorado, there's a weird thing. They send everybody a ballot, and if you're uncommitted, they send you both ballots. And so if you're an uncommitted voter in Colorado, you can easily mess with Donald Trump if you want to. And I think that that might happen. A lot of people who would otherwise be Democrats, they know Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. Why not mess around with Donald Trump? Because I hate him so. And I think that might happen. She might do well. She could potentially win Colorado.
And on the other side, I think you will see a considerable amount of Democrats either staying home or voting for someone other than Joe Biden. If that's what you're talking about, I think you'll see a considerable, not the margins that you see in Michigan because of the Muslim population in Michigan, but I think those that do not believe that Joe Biden has gone far enough, taking a stand against Israel, I think they're going to either stay home or they will find a way to protest a vote like they did in Michigan.
It'll be interesting to watch because, Biden, he cannot do, if you look at the situation with Israel and Hamas, both sides of that conflict have a reason to be angry with Joe Biden.
Yep.
Because he gave all that money to Iran. They, of course, then turn around and they fund Hamas and all of those other groups. And then on the other side, he's giving Israel a whole bunch of missiles. And so you've got, as Chris has said, and I think we've all said, we are funding both sides of that war. Biden is getting squeezed on this issue. And I don't know if he's got a way out of this or not. He can call for... Why did Kamala Harris, by the way, I'm sorry, squirrel moment. Why did Kamala Harris go out and call for a 6-week ceasefire? Why is the president not doing that?
I think I have the answer to that. You have the Muslim vote and the what are they called, Arab American vote in Michigan that is so important. If you look at all of the battleground polls, Donald Trump is winning in Michigan.
Oh yeah,
he's already winning. And Joe Biden cannot become the president of the United States. The Electoral College math is virtually impossible to win the 270 votes you need to become the president of the United States without Michigan if you're Joe Biden. So they're freaked out about all the situation with the Arab American voters and the Muslim voters in Michigan who are very irritated about their support. So you see Kamala Harris coming out just before Super Tuesday to say, we must have a ceasefire. They want to shore that up because without Michigan, Joe Biden cannot win the presidency.
There's no way.
But unless they completely reverse course and denounce Israel, they're not going to win back those Muslim American voters in Michigan.
I don't think so. I don't know. What do you think? Is there any way back for Joe Biden with those folks in Michigan? And that's one question. Second question is, will those Muslim Americans come back home, as they like to say, when it's time for the general election?
Well, they're pretty angry.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know that it can be fixed. I mean, Joe Biden has to walk a tightrope on that because there are large swaths of this country that think it's the right thing to do to support Israel. But not in Michigan. It's not the right thing to do in Michigan. So how do you walk that line? Because if you mollify the voters in Michigan who are concerned about this issue, you absolutely anger everybody else who supports Israel. It's an amazing tightrope, but I got to tell you, Michigan is a real problem for Joe Biden. And again, without Michigan, a lot of people say there's just no way that he can become president. So that I know that of all the things they're concerned about, Michigan is near the top of the list.
Well, and here's the other thing that I would say about Michigan is, hasn't Joe Biden also really pissed off the unions because of the whole electric vehicle mandate? So in Michigan, you've got all of those unions and for the auto workers, and you've got the Muslims. And so now you've got Donald Trump coming in, and this is a guy who, I mean, he's been sort of friendly with unions, sometimes not so friendly with unions. It just depends. But it's clear that Joe Biden has not done anything to engage with the unions, legislatively speaking. So how does he get out of that?
I think it's a matter of getting back to your original question. I think it's Thank you. All right.
So
Kirby says no.
There you are. There you are. You're back.
Well, thank you, Kirby. We're just trying to get one to work, buddy. So to answer your question, they're trying to send a clear and concise message to the Arab American voters on Super Tuesday. And in order to send any sort of clear and concise message, you have to have someone as a messenger other than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Michigan goes, sadly, union voters have traditionally done what they are told, regardless of what they believe is in their personal interest. Remains to be seen whether that happens in 2024. I think they are clear that if their personal interest is to be served, it's not going to be served under Joe Biden, because even without the electric vehicle mandate, their economy is going into the toilet like the rest of the United States.
The rank and file union members, they are having an incredibly difficult economy. So now I guess the question is, at what point will the rank and file union auto workers, will they say, you know what, screw management? Remember that epic moment when, I forget the guy's name, is it Sean Joseph, the head of the union workers, came out and he said, well, management is for Joe Biden. However, the rest of us, the rank and file, are clearly for Donald Trump. At what point does the rank and file hear that and say, you know what, we're going to vote for Donald Trump because he was better for our economy?
Well, it's the economy, stupid, is the old mantra that's been around since all of us have been alive. And it's true that the economic issues that Joe Biden has created in the United States, inflation and otherwise, are going to drive voters away from the Democrats and toward Donald Trump. And even if they don't drive them toward Donald Trump, if you decrease the turnout to the point that you lose a percentage of those Democrat voters in Michigan, you lose Michigan anyway.
Yep.
All right, it is 6:21 on Super Talk 99.7. Be back in just a moment from the Nashville Palace. Hello, everybody. It's 6:25 now on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson coming to you live from the Nashville Palace, where we have a full house and a lot of noise. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And we're watching the results come in, and the results have been pretty interesting. Already, they've called Virginia for Trump.
Yeah.
They're going to call Vermont. I mean, all they got to do is look at a couple of bellwether counties and see if the results sort of mirror what they expected. And they're going to call a lot of these things very quickly. It's just the problem that, some of these states that are still outstanding are all the way over on the Mountain Time Zone, California Time Zone, Pacific Time, even Alaska on Alaskan Time. And it just takes a long time they can't make an announcement until the polls are closed.
Let me ask you this. How difficult is it, and you've been there, how difficult is it at the network level to try to create some kind of drama when there clearly isn't any? I mean, the four of us can BS here all day long, but I mean, they're actually trying to come up with
a BS? Us?
No, never. But I mean, they have to try to have some sort of suspense and drama when there clearly isn't any.
No, I mean, the outcome is well known. Trump's going to do well. Biden's going to do well. I think the conversation is what happens with Nikki Haley. What's her end game? That's going to be a lot of the conversation tonight. She's gone back to South Carolina. She doesn't have any events. She's not spending any money on advertising going forward. But she spent the last few days just annihilating and going after Trump in a very ugly way, which doesn't endear her to Republicans. I don't know what her end game is. I can't figure it out because the things she's doing, to me, don't make any sense politically.
No, I think she's just sitting back waiting on some possibility of Trump, something to drop on Trump to somehow destroy him. That's the only...
Being around just in case something happens to Trump, whatever it might be. He gets convicted, something happens, and she either wants to...
How does that work out, though, after you spent all this time trashing Trump and irritating virtually every Republican in the country?
Yeah.
I think, and I would like to ask Chris Hand this question, because I think of the four of us, Chris was most harsh on Ron DeSantis. I think those who were harshest to Ron DeSantis would turn to Ron DeSantis at this point long before Nikki Haley.
Without a doubt.
Without a question.
Without a doubt.
Because DeSantis had the good grace and good sense to say, this is not my time. I'm going to step aside, allow Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee, get out of the way. I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm reading the room. Nikki Haley, I don't think she has a home anymore.
Well, and to Brian's point, she's waiting around for something to drop. But if something did drop, who is going to support this woman from his base?
Nobody.
There's other options. You got Vivek waiting in the wings. Tim Scott would be a better option. DeSantis would be a better option. But at the same time, nothing's going to happen. He could be sitting in a jail cell and his base is going to vote.
We'll vote for him, yeah.
No, and I think that Nikki Haley is making a decision as to whether or not she's going to drop a bomb and run as a third party and attempt to destroy Trump. I think Nikki Haley's options are, she claims she's not going to run as a no-labels candidate, yet she also claimed in the past that she would pledge to support whoever the Republican candidate.
Yeah.
So apparently Nikki Haley doesn't understand what the word pledge means, so I don't put any stock into her claim that she's not going to run as no-labels, and I would not be surprised if she did not try to be the proverbial, as they used to say, turd in the punch bowl, and just run as a never-Trump candidate, run as a third-party never-Trump candidate in an attempt, knowing very well that that would likely get Joe Biden the win.
It's interesting. I've heard somebody say that if she chose to go as a third-party candidate, she might enter the race with as much as 20% of the support. Now I think the number may be a little high, but maybe not far off. If you think about disaffected Republicans, who, there are some who don't like Donald Trump. Not many, but some. You got anybody on the Democrat side of the equation. They're looking for any reason not to vote for Joe Biden. And then you have this large swath of people in the middle that she has shown that they sort of like her. So I don't know. If she got in as a third-party candidate, she would at least be viable. I'm not sure she could win, but she would be viable. But as a Republican, no pathway forward. And the only thing that I see is, if you had some hope of becoming the Republican nominee, why did you spend the last 2 weeks attacking Donald Trump, who is going to be the nominee? There's no upside to that. What was the purpose of that? I don't get it. It doesn't make any political sense.
unless she's misreading the room and she thinks there's a much larger percentage of Republicans that would break away from Trump if she was on the general election ballot with Trump. And I just don't think those people exist.
All right, we got to take a break. It's 30 minutes now past the hour. Time for the news on Super Talk 99.7. right, everybody, it's Brian Wilson coming to you from the Nashville Palace, where things are getting hot and heavy. We're starting to get some results in. Before we go any further, let me turn to Chris Hand, who's keeping an eye on some of the things that have already been called in the early East Coast states. What do you got there, Chris?
So we got Virginia being called for Trump. And then, according to Fox News, North Carolina is too close, too early to call. But NBC is already calling North Carolina for Trump with, less than 1% of the vote in.
You know what happens is they look at one county or two counties that are thought to be the so-called bellwether counties, and they make a decision about that, and they say, all right, things look good here. That's about what we thought. There's not going to be any surprise here. Let's go ahead and call it. I mean, I've been in those decision rooms. I've seen that happen. There's no real surprises here, but it is interesting that they're calling them so quickly, and it won't be long, I think, before they call the state of Tennessee. Joining us right now is Scott Golden, who is the chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Tennessee. Good to have you.
Thank you, Brian.
On the broadcast.
What's up, Scott?
Great to be here with you guys. What a crowd, huh?
Yeah,
Man, we have the best crowds in Middle Tennessee.
Look at this.
That's
I
called
mean, it is wall to wall in here.
just a gratuitous, call for applause is what that is. All right, so let's talk a little bit about. You've been talking to the higher ups in the Republican Party. What are they concerned about?
Nothing. I think. Look, everybody's looking for a big night. I think we know what's going to happen. It's we look for an early call for Tennessee as well. This has been strong Trump country for a while, and I think it'll follow suit. Some of the campaigns are watching Vermont, some of the more moderate states, California. It's going to be interesting.
Colorado, maybe.
Colorado, all of these states out there. So I think it'll go on for a little while tonight. A lot of down ballot stuff that everybody's watching. There's 100 congressional elections on the ballot in all of these states, and so you've got some retirements, Texas and California. So, Republican voters are voting more than just presidential preference tonight. They're kind of picking, in some of these states, picking their candidates that they want to go to Congress. So there's a lot going on. It's a big election night.
What are you hearing in terms of those congressional races, what it looks like?
Again, this is R to R versus R primary. So there's, different funding out of different localities. So I think it's going to be one of those where everybody's just going to have to kind of wait to see what happens. Again, Tennessee, ours aren't on the ballot. They come up in August.
Right.
But we've got a lot of local races, judges across the state, some DA races, school board races, all within our listing area. So after tonight, that's where I'm going to be looking at some of these R versus R contests down ballot.
How has the turnout been in Tennessee? Because, obviously you're right. Nobody really is worried about the outcome here. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee out of Tennessee. No surprises there. But does that mean that people don't rush to cast their ballot on an election
That's a
like
great
this?
question.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so, we obviously had rain in many parts of the state today, so that may hurt turnout a little bit. Of course, there's a lot of people, the election's over with, I'm busy. As one of my friends say, the milk test, if your wife calls you at 5 o'clock, are you going to go pick up milk or are you going to go vote? In this election, everybody's going to pick up milk, right? They're going to bypass the vote. So, nope.
All right, we're having trouble with your microphone. We'll try to get that worked out. Matt Murphy has just arrived, but
so I'm hoping, we voted.
If you just bang it on the table, it might help.
We voted
give it the
200, a little over 200,000 early.
Yeah.
And so I hope that it's 200,000 or 300,000. I think people got out to vote today. I hope everybody recognizes that this is an opportunity. This kind of begins the race for November, right? This is, for me, I've poured 6 or 7 months into this. So this is a great night to be around to celebrate it and move on to the next phase of this election.
All right. So no big problems, anything crop up? Because you always hear that, we had a problem here at this ballot place or that ballot.
A little bit here and there, but
Nothing
nothing systematically. We do, Tennessee is consistently ranked. Shout out to Trey Hargett, Mark Goins. Heritage Foundation ranks us the best in the nation for election integrity, have for the last 3 years. So Tennessee's not the place that we're worried about. It's other states.
An interesting thing happened today in the state of Arizona in that Kyrsten Sinema, who was running as an independent, Carrie Lake, the Republican, Gallegos is the Democrat.
Yeah.
Kyrsten Sinema got out. And most people I've been reading today look at it and say that's a big help for Carrie Lake. Is that your sense of it as well?
I think so. that's Arizona politics is a little different than our politics, but Arizona has been reliably red, and I think that Sinema's done an interesting job. She was, for somebody that was elected as a left-wing activist 6 years ago,
she turned out to be
move
more
back
of a moderate,
a lot more of a moderate. Of course, it helps when you're standing next to Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders and all of. We would be really right-wing compared to those guys. So I think Sinema getting out certainly has a little vacuum there.
Forgive me if this question's been asked because I was repairing a little technical difficulty, but do you like the split, the presidential split versus other candidates for office in the primary? In other words, do you like having the presidential as a standalone and then the other primaries in office? Or does it matter to you as chairman of the party?
This has all been about us front-loading to get to what was, traditionally called the Southern primary.
Right.
California Democrats moved up their primary, which, put California in with us tonight. So this is the first time in the history, this is the largest delegate haul night in the history of presidential politics. So I like us being up early in the process. And so, unfortunately, if you're going to do that, you kind of have to make us stand alone a little bit. So, I think it is what it is, but, it's kind of morphed, and it's, a broader conversation long-term for both the RNC and DNC is how we do these presidential nominating contests. Should we, I joked about with all of our friends from Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire that the first in the nation Tennessee primary sounded really good. Why not let us go first as let the presidential candidates come to us? But, there's state law that's involved in it as well. So, it's just been the way it is. But I think as we move closer to holistic looking at the process, I think, how we set these dates are going to be looked at going forward.
I'm curious, and I know it's unrelated to presidential politics, but while you're here, Scott, I'm curious, your feelings, your thoughts as chairman of the GOP, the day that you heard the announcement that Mark Green was not running for re-election versus your thoughts the day you heard that Mark Green had decided that he would continually run.
I heard it on Twitter like everybody else,
that was a shock, wasn't it?
I was stunned.
I know.
All of us were stunned.
I appreciate all of our elected officials, the Tennessee General Assembly, these guys, part-time legislature, spending the time, people being in Washington for 35 weeks out of the year. It is a difficult task. So I appreciate all those guys being willing to serve, and I get the lure of wanting to get out of D.C. and come back to Tennessee. So, but I am thrilled that Congressman Green has decided to get back in it. Whatever he wants to do in the future, that gives the opportunity for some great candidates to be developed behind him, and should things change down the road, we got a great bench in this state. So.
Our special guest is Scott Golden, the chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Tennessee. Okay, you're an experienced hand. I'd like to get your take on what is Nikki Haley up to?
It's up to her. I wish I could peek into the mind. What I do hope is that if the night plays out the way that it does, and I don't know how mathematically close President Trump will be to clinching, but he's going to be pretty darn close.
He's going to be on the cusp, I think.
And, look, it is time for us to move forward to Biden-Trump. It is. But the general election sort of starts tonight. And I think that's the sense I get with a lot of Republican voters is, we don't want to run anybody out. But on the flip side, when you know that there's no path to win, we need to go ahead and start unifying as a party and moving forward.
Earlier we were talking, though, we can't understand her strategy. If she wanted to hang it back and say, well, maybe something will happen to Trump, then why would you spend the last week criticizing President Trump so harshly and not ingratiating yourself at all with Republican voters across the country? In fact, hacking them off pretty bad. So, what was the end game there? Do you think she has some idea of running as a third-party candidacy? Is that something that you think might happen?
So there's some ballot access issues with some of that stuff. In Tennessee we have a sore loser law that if you're on the ballot, you can't get back on as somebody else. A lot of the dates have passed to get on ballot access. So I'm not really sure. I think the delegate part of it does make sense. Now, you're right. Obviously, President Trump's going to go to Milwaukee with the lion's share of delegates. You would think if should anything happen, you would want to be friends with the Lions.
Well,
with
exactly,
those, right.
And she's not done that at all.
Can you explain the sore loser law that we have in Tennessee?
Yeah, so if you lose a Republican primary, for example, or Democrat primary, you can't go out and register as an independent and run. So once you basically get one bite at the apple.
You can choose independent or Republican or Democrat. You can't do both.
You can't do both. That's correct.
Wow.
Once you lose that primary, you're out.
And other states have other hurdles as well.
Correct. Yeah, it's just timing. A lot of it was October. You know, our ballot for president was set in December 5th. So that's how far back. You know, this was 90 days ago that we put all these candidates on our ballot.
Well, she says she does not interested in running on the no labels, but they've got ballot access in a lot of states.
They have been working ballot access quietly, and you know, I hope that, and I would think that she wouldn't at the end of the day. I mean, you know, she's been a good Republican, and you know, at the end of the day, you play out your string and you let the voters fall. But I mean, I think after tonight, if the ways are going, it's time to move this on to the general election.
If you were not Scott Golden, chairman of the Tennessee GOP, if you were Scott Golden, chairman of the national GOP, and Nikki Haley had reversed herself on a pledge made to you, how concerning would that be to you, and what would your reaction be?
Yeah, we're not. So I was on the debate committee, by the way, and we were the ones that came up with the pledge. Actually, it was bequeathed to us from 2016 when everybody had to take the pledge. So, I mean, I think going forward, it's a little problematic because you kind of have to, these guys are going to say it. And she wasn't the only one, by the way. There were other candidates that said, well, I'll do what I have to do to get in the debate. Then after I didn't fare well, I'm not going to abide by it. So it doesn't say a lot that if you're willing to make agreements to get on the debate stage and then turn around and reverse 180 degrees.
With you being on the debate committee, what can we do to get some better moderators moving forward?
Pay for the debates. That was a lot of them. We did our best. We can actually only just X out a couple. We had a couple black balls that we could say you can't do it.
Okay.
But
right. We got to take a break. Our guest has been Scott Golden, chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Tennessee. Scott, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for the grant.
It is now 50 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com. Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
Good evening, everybody. You're not listening to The Drive because we're not normally on this time. This is Overdrive. This is Overdrive.
Right.
We're going to be here for another hour, bringing you all the results and talking about all that is happening on Super Tuesday. It's Brian Wilson. Your name is Dan Mandis.
Dan Mandis.
That's Matt Murphy over there, and Chris Hand is off being a social butterfly. He'll join us here in just a moment.
Chris.
A tremendous crowd here at the Nashville Palace tonight. As the results are coming in, and we're starting to get some details. Virginia's been called for Trump. North Carolina's been called for Trump.
Thank you.
And the only one that seems to be sort of a little bit close right now is...
We're getting nuts. We're getting bumps from Giles County.
Fist bumps.
Yeah. Some of these guys have been here hitting it hard since 3, if you get my drift.
They've been poll watching
That's
since
right.
3.
They've been at it. That's right. So anyway, long story short, the only one that seems to be even a little bit close right now is Vermont. Now, Trump is leading by about 10 points, but Nikki Haley's making a good run in the state of Vermont. And you heard Scott Golden say a short time ago, that's the one that everybody's sort of watching. I think she might do well, but not win in Vermont. And then the question is, I think Colorado is one that they think that a lot of Democrats may cross over, mess with the system, and do well there. But we're a long time to do that. Polls have just closed here in Tennessee, and I would not be surprised if they call Tennessee pretty quick.
We should just go ahead and do that, Brian. We should at Super Talk 99.7 WD10 go ahead and call Tennessee.
I don't have my breaking news sounder.
Election desk.
Schwang. But listen, we know what it was up now, 80% for Donald Trump.
Well, let me ask, does it matter what she does in Vermont? Does it matter what she does in Colorado? I mean,
No.
We know ultimately what the end result is going to be.
I have a general feeling, and this is just my gut, and Brian, you've been doing it more than I, and you've been a lot closer to this than me. And so I don't suggest that I know anything particular, but I just have a feeling that at some point tomorrow or Thursday, Nikki Haley's bowing out of the race. I have that feeling.
It would be the smart thing to do, but again, I'm baffled at what her strategy was.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lick of sense based on what we've seen so far.
And maybe it's just trying to put reason to what has thus far been unreasonable.
Yeah.
But I don't see any explanation or any viable reason. She has, up until now, said, well, I want to hear from the voters. I want to get to Super Tuesday. The only thing that's going to dissuade me from continuing in the race is if the voters speak loudly and clearly. Well, the voters are going to speak loudly and clearly tonight.
Yeah.
So one would assume that that's going to dry up any future funding sources that she has.
You may be right about one thing, Matt, and that is that we're trying to put reason to something that may not have reason. She just may be a very stupid candidate. She may just be dumb. I mean, that could be part of it.
Hey, can I make a request? You guys have not heard this Hillary Clinton audio yet that I pulled earlier, so I want to get your reaction to Hillary talking about Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Go ahead.
Somebody the other day said to me, Zerlina, well, but Joe Biden's old. I said, you know what? Joe Biden is old. Let's go ahead and accept the reality. Joe Biden is old. So we have a contest between one candidate who's old, but who's done an effective job and doesn't threaten our democracy. And we have another candidate who is old, barely makes sense when he talks, is dangerous and threatens our democracy. So really, pick between your two old ones and figure out how you're going to save our democracy, because no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, you want to maintain freedom and the rule of law and protection for people's fundamental rights, or at least I used to think so.
Shut up, Hillary. So here's the thing. Enough. So there's a number of...
We were having a good time, Dan, and then you killed that audio.
You killed the whole vibe in here with that.
Did you feel the room go down to buzz?
So
you're harshing our buzz, man.
Here's the thing, though. There's so many almost like cliche talking points at this point in that one 50 second soundbite. Number one, how many times are we going to be insulted by this whole Donald Trump is a threat to democracy? Nobody is taking that seriously anymore unless they're already, these people that think that, we're a bunch of extremists.
If you want to know what's a threat to democracy, all you have to do is look at the Biden administration.
Yep.
And what they've done, and the threat to the national security as well,
yep.
What they've done on the border. And now this story that came out today, that the Biden administration was flying people into the country from third countries. They wouldn't even have to come to the border. You just go to the airport in Venezuela, and the Biden administration will fly you directly to some airport in America.
Yep.
320,000 people.
You know what I consider a threat to democracy? Jack Smith is a threat to democracy. The Colorado Supreme Court is a threat to democracy. This knucklehead judge in New York, Fannie Willis, is a threat to democracy. These individuals that are attempting to use a third branch of government, the judicial system, in order to prevent Donald Trump from getting elected president in 2024, that's your threat to democracy. And Hillary Clinton's one to talk about old people, isn't she?
Yeah.
I mean, and frankly, I don't know of anyone, we were talking about this on the show earlier today, I don't know of anyone that looks at Donald Trump. Donald Trump stands up on a stage for an hour and a half and speaks extemporaneously without notes for an hour and a half on a nightly basis, and he makes one misstep, and the mainstream media wants to throw that up as if that's a Joe Biden type guy.
The thing that gets me about that is think about what the schedule this man's been keeping. He's in courtroom. He's at a rally. I mean, he's just bouncing around. He's, you get exhausted. I mean, I know just trying to do a 4-hour broadcast that at the end of that 4 hour, sometimes I wonder if I'm still making sense. And this man goes like the Energizer Bunny. He stumbles once, he slurs a word, maybe he says something just a little wrong, but compare and contrast that with the, maybe 2 minutes a day we see the President of the United States on the world stage, and almost every single time there's some kind of screw up. So, I mean, she needs to just shut up. I mean, I don't even know why anybody pays attention to her anymore.
Well, I've said it for a long time, and I will say it until November and the election, and Joe Biden is no longer president next January, that the best that we see of Joe Biden is the 5 minutes that we see of him on stage or in front of the camera every day. And every single one of his handlers know exactly when he's going to be on that stage. They prep him for the time that he is in front of the cameras every day, and it's 5 or 10 minutes. That is the best that he's going to be on any given day is what we see. And if that's the best, it is a frightening thing in the White House.
And by the way, we're 2 days away from the State of the Union. He had spent 3 or 4 days at Camp David preparing for this speech. Listen, if he face plants, I mean, oh my gosh, would that be something?
Well, what did he?
If he face plants or screws up.
When you say something, you mean something great?
Well, no, just if he falls on his face, he trips, he stumbles.
Yeah.
He slurs a word, he says something stupid. It is fraught with peril for them.
Yeah.
And they think that this is the big turnaround moment.
Yeah, they're trying to do a reset on his administration at the State of the Union. How do you can't pick up the feathers again with illegal immigration or the pullout of Afghanistan. You can't fix that. And that's the problem is how do you do this great Biden reset? There's no way for them to do it.
I mean, the desperation to suggest that Republicans are the ones that are weak on immigration, right? That's been their suggestion. We had the big border security plan in place, but Republicans stopped it. Give me a break. No American is buying that. And I think the other thing that they're going to try to use, not to get too far ahead of tonight, they're going to try to use abortion to try to pick off 20-something and 30-something-year-old women. I don't know that it's going to work, but I think that's going to be a big push for them.
Matt, they did. We were talking about this earlier. they did exit polling in North Carolina and Virginia. Abortion was only like the top issue for 11% in both states. It was illegal immigration and the economy. That's what people are worried about, and they can try to pivot from abortion.
Young female college students are more worried about if they can jog on campus right now than whether or not they can get an abortion.
That's exactly a great point.
You know, the one thing that I heard somebody say, though, today that really resonated with me, something I had not thought of, was the fact that we have two candidates in Trump and Biden that are well-known and well-established. I mean, everybody knows what you have with Donald Trump. Everybody knows what you got with Joe Biden. Is this thing locked in already? I mean, have people started to make their decisions about who they're going to vote for? Because when you don't know a candidate, there can be a lot of volatility in the polls and everything. But people are starting to make up their minds, and I think this stuff is going to lock in early. I don't think we're going to have a big, surprise at the end where a bunch of votes shift around, unless there's something that happens that we're not expecting. I think people have sort of started to make up their minds about this because we know so much about both of these individuals.
Biden doesn't have the benefit of not having a record this time around.
No, he doesn't.
Well, and that's number one. Number two, he can't run on Trump's record because his record, and I think Trump's record is good, his record is exponentially worse than Donald Trump's. And no matter how much he tries to shine it, Joe Biden's record is a steaming pile of crap, and you can't shine it.
And how much does he run from the basement? I mean, he had the benefit even in 2019 of running from his basement because of COVID-19, or 2020 running against COVID-19. I don't think he has the ability to do that. He's got to get out and about to, quote-unquote, show his viability, and every time he does that, he stumbles and bumbles and fumbles his way through it.
Oh, Matt, come on. Have you seen the little Biden three-step jog? that is golden, man.
It just exudes vibrancy, doesn't it?
The Biden shuffle.
The Biden shuffle. That's exactly right.
Well, look, I just think that in this particular case, we are sort of in an unusual election season in that we pretty much, even today, know who the nominees are going to be, unless Biden gets out. I mean, let's just talk about that for a moment. Do you guys see a scenario where Biden gets out? Because the Michelle Obama thing today sort of told me that if she's saying that she's going to support Biden, then it seems to me that the Obama residents, a decision has been made that Joe Biden is going to go this thing to the distance, which I can't imagine, but that appears to be what's happening.
I can't imagine that Joe Biden is making any of those decisions. Maybe Jill Biden is helping others within the Democrat family make some of those decisions. I think it all depends on how vibrant Joe Biden can maintain himself until the convention. And at the point of the convention, then, I mean, all is lost or won for the Democrats, depending on your point of view. But I continue to maintain that there's no way that they can present him as a candidate and expect to come out victorious unless something astronomical happens.
Can I ask a question? And this is for you, and maybe we'll answer this after we come back from the break. But when you look at Joe Biden and how bad he's doing, why is it the Democrats are afraid to make a move? Like, you've got Gavin Newsom, you've got other people. We always talk about whether or not he will be the candidate. It's obvious he shouldn't be. Why don't the Democrats make a move?
You got to skip Kamala to do it. I mean, that's my answer.
Yeah,
I think there are two inflection points where if there's going to be a move, they might do it. Number one, he clinches. He is the nominee. He has enough delegates to be the nominee, and that question is settled. Then he could then become the kingmaker if he chose to do that. The other inflection point is the convention, where if you get to convention time and it's looking as bad as it's starting to look, I mean, he's losing in all 7 swing states. Not by a little, but in some states by a lot. And that's why I look at those numbers. Those swing state numbers are so important. And again, I think people are sort of locking in on what they believe, and I think that there's not going to be a lot of volatility. I think these numbers are going to gradually solidify. And I don't know how in the world he can go forward. And I can't imagine that Democrats would allow him to go forward if they can't see a pathway for him to win the thing. And they hate Donald Trump so much that I think they're looking for an opportunity, and it may be that we are in the in the last throes of that as we get to the convention.
All right, so Chris, what do you show on your phone?
So I'm seeing that NBC News has called Tennessee for Trump. They have called Oklahoma for Trump. They called Oklahoma for Trump. They called North Carolina for Trump, and Virginia, which we know.
Yeah. So we got to go to a break, but I've got a question for all of us when we come back. You're talking about the polls. We all talk about the polls. People always ask me, yeah, but can you trust the polls? Because so we're going to talk about that coming up next. Dan Mandis, Brian Wilson, Chris Hand, and Matt Murphy live from the Nashville Palace Super Tuesday. By the way, thank you to our sponsors, Glock Store, Chew270.com, Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, and Members Nutrition. We'll return next on WTM. Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
It is 25 minutes now past the hour of 7 o'clock. This is not the drive. This is the overdrive, a bonus hour of the drive from the Nashville Palace, where the numbers are coming in, and let's just call it what it is. It's looking really good for Donald Trump. He's going to rack up a lot of numbers. Things are a little tighter than you might expect in Vermont, and we're waiting on some other states to drop, but. Tennessee, it's no surprise, overwhelmingly has gone for Donald Trump. So those numbers are in now. Look, it's one of those things. It's a big night in politics, but there are not going to be any real shocks here, I don't think.
No, I mean, it's actually sort of fun to watch Fox News try to, make some drama out of all of this. But... yeah.
They're in the old show. Yeah. Well, you got to, as we know in this industry, you got to keep the needle bouncing.
Yep. Now, the question that I posed is, we all talk about the polling, and we mentioned that Trump is doing.
Big query.
My big query is, do we believe those polls, and how much do we use them as motivation to get excited for November 5th?
I think that Matt and I are going to have very different opinions about this.
I was about to say so. Because Brian Wilson and Matt Murphy are polar opposites when it comes to polling and polling data. I shy away from it. I understand that polling is a snapshot in time, and it gives you that snapshot. And if you think of it as Polaroids, you put those Polaroids together and you can see something trending one way or the other. But I think polling today, for me, is useless. There's so much that can happen between now and November. I understand why we talk about it. I understand why we look at it. But I shy away from it because I think everything can change with a dynamic something happening tomorrow.
Okay, but here's my question. With the understanding that it can change, do you believe the polling as it stands right now? So in other words, the seven battleground states, Donald Trump is winning in every conceivable poll that Trump is winning Biden. Do you believe that is true right now based on the polling right now, given the fact that it can change next week?
Yes. I mean, I believe it.
Okay.
I believe it only in as much as this. My grandfather was a Republican for all of his life that I knew him. I think he was a Democrat back before I was born. And my grandfather would regularly, and I watched it happen, pick up the phone, somebody starts yapping on the other end of the phone, yada, 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 poll, yada, 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 click, goodbye. I think conservatives and Republicans are less trusting of pollsters. I think they're less apt to respond to a poll, and I think that shades polls toward the Democrats. So if Donald Trump's up by 6 or 7 now, I would suggest that he's actually up by a little bit more.
Do you know that? I agree with you on that. Let me just say what I believe about polls. Yes, a snapshot in time, but given what we talked about earlier, that I think that this race is solidifying earlier. I think there is some value in looking at the polls. I never look at one poll and say, wow, that's the definitive poll. What I do is I look at, okay, are there battleground polls that show Trump is leading? Yes. Here's another organization. What does they show? That Trump is leading. Here's a third one. Trump is leading. Now, when you get 3 polls that all sort of mirror one another, it says to me they're all finding out about the same thing. The numbers may be off a little bit here or a little bit there, but generally they're showing the same general result. So I think there is value, and then you look at not necessarily the snapshot in time. You acknowledge this is the way it is today, could change, but you also get some value at seeing where the trend is. And the trend, undeniably, in the last few days has been Trump is starting to pull away in the battleground states and everywhere. People are starting to make up their mind about this thing, and I think that unlike past elections where you don't know a lot about the candidates, maybe you got 5 or 6 candidates out there, and you're waiting to see which one impresses you most. We know who these people are. We do. We know who they are, and so there's no surprises there. I think the polls may have more validity this round than they have in past rounds.
I would say this too. I agree with Brian wholeheartedly that these are individuals that we know. These are candidates that are well known to the entire voting population. But I sit back occasionally and I recognize how unprecedented all of this truly is. I mean, it is fascinating. I mean, I understand Grover Cleveland existed, and I understand that Harrison beat him and then he came back. But we've never. I don't think that. I mean, I don't know of a time in American history where you've had the same candidate 3 nominating periods in a row where he didn't win. And, I mean, I don't. So we're about to have the same Republican nominee for a 3rd session. And that's unprecedented in American history in any political party. Given that he lost the second time around, it makes it particularly unprecedented. I mean, these are truly times that we've never seen.
And then when you look at all of the DOJ investigating him and all of the different the Attorney General, the DAs, and the judges, you were talking about Judge Engron earlier in New York. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of unprecedented going on.
We got to take a break. 31 minutes now past the hour of 7 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
Good evening, everybody. It's 7:35 on Super Talk 99.7. We're in the extra hour, the bonus hour. We call it the overdrive hour here on The Drive, where we are bringing you all the results for the Super Tuesday and also just, chewing the fat about politics in general. We're at the Nashville Palace, and the crowd is, golly, what a great turnout it's been of our Super Talk fans who've come here to be here tonight. It's always great to hang with our fans and say hello, and so, the numbers are coming in. What's the latest that you've seen? Chris Hand, you've been sort of keeping an eye on it for us.
So the latest that I've seen is that Trump has Virginia, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, according to NBC News.
Tennessee.
And that's the latest that they're called.
Yeah. And are they still saying Vermont's too close to call?
Vermont has 33% in, and it's 48.2 to 48.2.
Wow.
Trump and Haley.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, but that's only 30% in.
33% in, yep.
Wow, so we're watching all of these numbers come in.
I just asked them if they were happy that Trump won Tennessee.
We heard that, yes.
Yeah.
We sort of.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
We're doing a little broadcast.
Yeah, my bad. My apologies.
It's out there. This is the punch drunk hour.
Yes, it is.
We've all been up too long, talking way too much.
I've been up since 1 a.m. I am just so we're all clear. I'm usually in REM sleep by now.
You keep going to bed earlier and earlier.
You've been talking to Amy because she says the same thing. It's like the older that I get, the earlier I go to bed.
Dan, as everyone knows, is all of our boss. He is the program director of Super Talk. And when I first got to Nashville, Dan said, Merv, don't contact me after 7. I'm winding down. And that became 6:30 and 6. Now it's 5:15. I'm talking to him on the phone. Matt, I've got to go. I got to get to bed.
And
true. No,
absolutely
it's
true.
It's all good.
And Amy is at home right now as she's saying it's actually about 4:30.
That's nicer than what I got. When I started, Dan just said, Chris, don't contact me.
I'm seeing the numbers in Vermont where Nikki Haley is now leading Donald Trump by 164 votes.
It'll be a big night for Nikki if she pulls out Vermont, guys.
Yeah.
A big night.
Yeah.
Big night.
I don't know. I think I'm now, the more I think about it, I've just decided she's a really bad candidate. She's not that bright. She's not running a great campaign. And I think I'm sort of with you now, Matt. I think she's just going to call it. She's going to take a day to catch her breath and then call it and say, I've done the best I can do, and I'm out.
I don't know what her future might be. And Dan, I think it was you asking this question earlier in the week of Brian, when Brian was doing one of his Race to the White House segments. What in the world does she think? She's a relatively young person with regard to politics, just over 50, I think, in her early 50s. And if she thinks she has a future in politics, what future does she think she has if by Thursday she has not called this race and said, I'm out? I don't understand.
What I said earlier, Matt, was I think she's going to be the newest commentator for MSNBC.
If you followed a lot of campaigns over the years, people who are in the campaigns, they start to note and notice certain things. And you start looking at advertising buys. She's not buying any more advertising. Now, she's got money coming in. She said she raised $1 million on Monday. She got money coming in, but, she also has a lot of expenses.
Who is donating to that campaign?
I don't know. Democrats, I think, a lot of them. To be quite honest, I really do believe that's the case.
Yeah, they want to keep up the chaos.
Yeah, they love the chaos. That's right.
Well,
and then the other part of it is that, you look at, what's the schedule? There are no events after Super Tuesday. Nothing on the, there's some talk about they had a conference call with the folks in Louisiana, which is coming up soon, and maybe she's going to try to stay in through Louisiana. I don't think so. I mean, all the signs are that they don't have any plans after Super Tuesday, which generally is the sign that a campaign is winding down or about to make a major change. So, I mean, clearly, I think tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day to see what we hear from Nikki, or maybe later tonight, what we hear from Nikki Haley.
I mean, once again, Ron DeSantis recognized, I want to have a place in the national political scene in 2028 and beyond. I'm going to stop all of the boot jokes, get back to Florida, get back to governing in Florida, get Chris Hand off my butt.
Who was making boot jokes?
I know, it's weird.
I don't remember that.
Apparently there were
I do.
There were people
I've
that
got
were
the
making
tape.
The booty jokes. I mean, and so Nikki Haley, one presumes that she's going to do that in the next several days. We'll see. We'll see. If she's got the money and she's got the ego-driven people around her that want her to continue the push, maybe she is convinced that there's some sort of future in it.
How could a candidate, Brian, you talk to these people, how can a candidate go from interview after interview, we're in it to win it, we're going to go all the way, and then it's like a couple of days later, well, we're just going to, pack up and go home?
When you're in the middle of a campaign and you've got people who are supporting you and you're hearing from them and they're feeding you all of this, positive reinforcement. Yeah, don't give up. We love you. We think, we think you're the one. And, you start to believe your own press at some point. And I think that's part of it. I think for a lot of politicians, it is ego. They just can't bring themselves to admit that they're failing. I've known a lot of people in my life like that. They fail, and they can't possibly think that I'm doing something wrong. It can't be me. So what is it? I just got to work a little harder. And they just convince themselves that there is a pathway. There is no pathway. There's no pathway.
It reminds me a little bit of how the liberals reacted to the Supreme Court decision on Colorado.
Yep.
Right? And this is where Nikki Haley has to be mentally, that all of these other states have to be wrong and I have to be right.
Right.
All of these voters that have voted for Donald Trump have to be wrong and I have to be right. Every Supreme Court justice, liberals and Democrats, were wrong, and MSNBC was right regarding the Constitution and Donald Trump's eligibility on the ballot. So, I mean, at some point, you recognize that you're just not being fed properly.
And sometimes you just have to say it to keep the party faithful out there working for you, to not give up hope. But, you say it, and it doesn't, that you're lying through your teeth, but you just still got to say it.
Well, here's the thing, though. We're talking about the Supreme Court. Jamie Raskin is out there talking about how they're going to, drum up legislation again in the House of Representatives. And it seems like, obviously, Mike Johnson is not going to allow that to come to the floor. But obviously, they're trying to just bring as much chaos as they possibly can.
Here, kitty, kitty. Yeah. That's what I would say to it. Here, kitty, kitty.
Yeah.
Continue that drumbeat. I think the American people are so sick to death of this concept that they think they can adjudicate their way out of a Donald Trump candidacy.
We know that Jamie Raskin and Adam Schiff and a few others that come to mind routinely went to the microphones and bald-faced lied and told stories that they knew were not correct just to get a narrative going against Donald Trump. They have absolutely zero credibility, and what I just can't understand is, as a reporter, if somebody lied to me, I went back to them afterwards and said, you didn't tell me the truth there. You knew better, and you didn't tell me the truth there. I don't know that I can count on you as a reliable source. But reporters today, it feeds a narrative that they want to get out there, so they just keep going back to these same old tired figures and getting the quote and running with that story as if it has any validity at all. I just don't understand it. If somebody has lied to you, that is no longer a reliable source. Why do you keep going back to that well? They do it because they like what he has to say, and it feeds the narrative that they want to put out there in the mainstream media.
No, absolutely. And ultimately, the Democrats are their own worst enemies when it comes to the average Americans, in my opinion. They have this D.C., New York narrative that they feed to themselves, and they think the rest of America thinks the same way, and they're shocked and amazed that Americans vote for Donald Trump despite their protestations and how evil they think he truly is.
Well, and here's the other thing, is that they believe that people who support Donald Trump are a bunch of rubes. That's also part of, the Democrat Party, if I remember right, used to be the party of the people, and the Republicans were the ones that were supposedly, up here. Now that is completely reversed. The Republican Party is more the party of the American people and the man on the street, and the Democrats are the ones that are out there, drinking champagne and partying it up.
Democrats used to be free speech and anti-war, and now they want to censor you on social media and send billions over to Ukraine.
That's exactly right. By the way, very quickly, Kirsten Sinema has decided that she is not going to run. She was not doing well in the polling in her run for the Senate, so she just decided to bow out. And so I think this is very good news for Kari Lake.
We were talking about that earlier with Scott Golden, and I asked him what he thought about that. I think it is good news for Kari Lake. It's going to be a real interesting race between Kari Lake and Gallegos, as the name of the Democrat is running. But Kirsten Sinema was an interesting person on the world stage. Everybody thought she was going to be way left. She turned out to be much more of a moderate than people knew.
Yeah.
She believed in the old-fashioned concept of compromise, which I still think is a good thing now and then in politics. We've become so polarized we don't believe in it anymore. And she was trying to revive that quaint notion by becoming an independent. She did have the ability to walk to both sides. She was liked very much on Capitol Hill. People really liked her. But I think she's decided she just doesn't have the heart to go forward. I think she was an interesting person on the stage, even though she, was a Democrat who became an independent. I thought she was an interesting character.
Do you think she felt like she could become a John McCain-esque figure?
That's what she was hoping, because McCain had that ability.
That he could walk the line. The Democrats liked him because he was a maverick and he would go against party.
But John McCain was an astute politician. He knew how to walk that line. I don't think she quite got it. Yeah. Or maybe the times changed where that wasn't something that was allowed anymore.
Well, when she put out the message that she was quitting, here's what she said. I believe in my approach, but it's not what America wants right now. She said in the video message revealing she was retiring instead of seeking another term. She says, because I chose civility, understanding, listening, working together to get stuff done, I will leave the Senate at the end of this year. And so, but the truth is...
Do you think she's been talking to no labels?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, snap.
That's an interesting question.
That is a very interesting... Because you just said she's liked on both sides. I don't know.
I don't know that she's presidential, Tim.
Does she...
Is America ready for a bisexual member, a president? I don't know if that's something we're ready for
but
yet.
But as a vice presidential candidate choice, maybe.
Yeah, it could be.
Does she have enough national profile to get it done?
That's where I was going. Most people, we're a bunch of nerds, so we know who she is.
Right.
Most people have no idea who she is.
No, I would agree with that. And speaking of vice presidents, I have a question that just occurred to me. If we all agree, and we do, that Donald Trump will be the nominee for the Republicans, then I'm curious, and I know all of us have talked about it on our various shows, but here together, who is our front runner as a vice presidential choice? Let me start with this. Vivek Ramaswamy has a place in Donald Trump's cabinet or in his administration.
Absolutely, no doubt.
I do not believe he is the vice presidential
I do not.
I agree with that.
So he's a figure. I think that we can start naming names, and I think all of these people are going to have a place. But who do you three gentlemen believe is the potential front runner?
Rick Scott.
Rick Scott, not Tim Scott.
I'm sorry, Tim Scott.
Oh, very good.
My mistake.
Okay, yes,
Tim Scott.
yes.
So I like Tim Scott too. However, I have gone over to the Byron Donalds side. I think the Byron Donalds is a lot more passionate. He brings it in interviews, and he's not... Tim Scott, I love Tim Scott, really nice guy, but in today's political environment, you got to bring the fire, and that's what Byron Donalds does, is he brings the fire.
Listen, I think that's an interesting choice. There's a lot of good people out there. I sort of thought it might be Kristi Noem.
What do you think, Han? What do you think?
I think the safest bet is Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I think that she would be fantastic. I think a wild card would be somebody like J.D. Vance, but I think J.D. Vance is more primed to step up into that Mitch McConnell role.
I go Tim Scott only because Tim Scott is Mike Pence, but he's an African American version of Mike Pence, and I think Donald Trump needs that as a balance for his energy.
Black Pence.
Yep.
Black Pence.
Black Pence.
Live from the Nashville Palace, it is Super Tuesday on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dan Mandis here along with Brian Wilson, Chris Ann, also Matt Murphy. Special thanks to our sponsors this evening, Glock Storage, Shoot270.com, Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, and also MembersNutrition.com. We'll return next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
It is 54 minutes now past the hour of 7 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson. You're listening to Overdrive. an extra hour, a bonus hour here from the Nashville Palace. It's Dan Manis, Chris Hand, Matt Murphy, and me as we wrap things up here in the last few moments. We got to go all the way to the top of the hour, guys. What else is on your mind as we look at the numbers? You got some new results for us, Chris?
Yeah, so it looks like Trump is winning Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Alabama are on the board, as well as Maine, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. And Vermont is still a tight race.
Where is Vermont right now?
Vermont, according to NBC, we got 44% in, and Trump is up
Maine.
49 to 46.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Just below Maine, Brian, right next to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Oh, you meant
You said, where's Vermont? People laugh at my dumb jokes.
No, they do not.
Geography jokes very rarely go over.
I'm going to pull that for tomorrow. That was good. That was good, Matt Murphy. All right, very quickly. Brian, you've covered presidential campaigns for years and years. So
This is my 10th round.
what does Trump versus Biden look like to November 5th?
Well, if Biden is truly the nominee, I think that again, as I mentioned earlier, I think the numbers are starting to solidify. These are known entities to America. Not a lot more to learn. People who think that somehow that one of these trials is going to change people's opinion about Donald Trump that's just a pipe dream. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yep.
I don't think it bothers people who like Trump one whit.
What does the campaign look like from now till November 5th, Chris?
Oh, I'm in it for the memes. It is officially meme season, my friends.
There you go.
They're going to be spicy, and they're going to be overflowing.
You know, I don't see a path that Joe Biden can take to victory unless we have multiple third-party candidates, third, fourth, fifth-party candidates, a Kennedy candidacy, potential Nikki Haley candidacy. I don't know how Joe Biden overcomes the disastrous 3 years that has been the Joe Biden presidency, and the fact that it is up to him to repair it. Here's the dilemma for Biden. He's had a disastrous 3 years. Could a vibrant, youthful candidate get out there on the campaign trail and lie his way to victory? Yes. Joe Biden's not that guy. When you asked the question earlier, why did Kamala Harris come out and try to repair some of the Israel-Palestinian stuff? I think it's because Joe Biden can't possibly repair that himself. So I think Joe Biden is in a box, which is why I continue to believe that Joe Biden has to be replaced.
I'd like to see Joe Biden in a box, quite frankly.
Wouldn't we all?
Oh, jeez.
Well, now, hold on. We got to make sure we clarify which box.
No, we know exactly which box Brian Wilson meant.
A square one with padded walls.
That's right.
That's what we mean.
No, I mean, listen, this is a different animal. And I said the other day, the only thing that I'm certain about as we go forward for the rest of this political season all the way to November is that the things that we think are true today are likely not to be true on some level when we get to election day.
Is there any kind of,
I think it's just there are too many variables.
Is there any kind of a October surprise that would change things? I think the American people are so suspicious of everything now that somebody could come out with a tape of Donald Trump saying the most gosh-awful thing. People would be suspicious of it, and frankly, they probably wouldn't care.
Well, I think for Trump supporters, any of that would just bolster their support for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is,
recognize
obviously.
it for what it was. But, I mean, as far as those proverbial political bullets, what bullet have the Democrats not already attempted to fire at Donald Trump?
And it just bounces off.
He's like Superman. It just bounces right off his chest.
His entire presidency has been terrible, and then if you think that he's going to make it to November without one more gaffe, one more blunder, there's going to be something else that pops up in his way that is just a huge loss for him.
Joe Biden, you're talking about.
Joe Biden, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think Joe Biden's got a fall or a slip or, whatever it might be.
I have this dream scenario that on the way up the aisle, Mr. President, it's the President of the United States, Mr. Speaker, it's the President of the United States. He takes 2 steps and falls on his face.
And then you hear this. And he falls right.
If something like that were to happen that everybody sees, people are watching. There's cameras on him every moment. He's out in public. The camera never blinks. They're going to catch something. There's going to be a moment. The only thing that I think another thing that could happen, have a situation, for example, where you have a Mitch McConnell freeze up.
Right.
That would be bad for him. Well, listen, we thank you so much for joining us here from the Nashville Palace. We're going to wrap it up here and send it back to the station. Thank you so much. We will be back tomorrow morning at our regular schedule. Have a good evening, everybody. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN.